G'day, this is Primitive PCs. I'm Leo and today we're going to be taking a look at this, the AMD Radeon RX480 8GB model. In terms of specification, this graphics card from 2016 has 8 gigs of GDDR5 memory, 2304 unified shaders, a GPU clock of 1310 MHz, a memory at 2 GHz. It supports DirectX 12 and Vulkan. I'm pairing it in my system with an i7 4790 CPU and 24 GB of DDR3, so there won't be any sort of bottlenecks. The first game on our list today is BeamNG Drive. We're running it in 1080p medium settings on the quite intensive West Coast USA map. We've only got one car here. We're getting around 60, 68, 73, 59. It does drop below 60 frames per second sometimes. 1080p medium settings, BeamNG. This is great. Totally playable. Let's move on to the next game. Here we have Skyrim running at 1080p Ultra, which what appears to have a frame cap on it at 60 FPS, which I can't figure out how to remove, and couldn't be bothered Googling for 3 milliseconds to actually fix the problem. Has not dropped from 60 FPS once, and we're getting very, very stable frame times. Looking at all this water, yeah, it doesn't drop. Even looking at the entire town here, no FPS drop, 10 out of 10. On to the next game. Alright, we now have Farming Simulator 22 running at 1080p with everything turned up as high as it will go. We're not quite achieving 60 here. It is stuttering a little bit, but Farming Simulator 22 likes to stutter in the best case scenario. We're achieving anywhere from 40 to 60 frames per second. If you were to lower the graphics settings to the very high preset instead of having everything go as high as it will go, you could definitely achieve an almost constant 60 frames per second in this game. So once again, another playable title. On to the next one. Next game on our list is Car Mechanic Simulator 2021. We're running it at 1080p with the ultra settings. We're about to run the in-game benchmark here. Let's start counting our frames here. Oh, there was a big stutter. GPU is at 100% utilization, and note that your in-game performance will probably be higher than this if you're running with less cars in the garage. And of course, if you decide to run lower settings, but in some parts of the garage, we can get 70 frames per second. Other than that initial really bad stutter that we had, it's running very smoothly at these settings. As we can see here, we get an average of 65 FPS, a max of 75, and a minimum of 3 due to that massive stutter that we saw. On to the next game. And finally, the last game on our list to quench the thirst for retro gaming, can it run Crysis? We're running here at 1080p with all of the ultra settings selected, and we're getting 57, 59. I kind of expected it to run a bit better than this actually, since this game was 9 years old when this GPU came out. Ooh, it was a big stutter there. Should be. Whoa. Explosion caused a small stutter. So the RX480 can run Crysis, but not as well as I would have expected it to. So how does it stack up in general usage and video editing? Editing 1080p content on this computer works just fine. In fact, I even made the intro and outro to this video all on this graphics card. Oh look! As we can see, YouTube playback works perfectly fine on this graphics card. 1080p will work flawlessly, and so will 1440p. So you can find these cards on sites like eBay, but I'd personally steer clear of them, as some of them can be a bit... I'd instead go to a site like CEX, where you get a card with a warranty. You can get a 4GB one for 95 Australian dollars, and an 8GB one for 120 Australian dollars. So, do I recommend the RX480? Well, yes, I do. It's a great card if you're on a budget. It pairs well with older power supplies and older CPUs, such as the one that I tested with, and it can run most modern titles at 1080p at a 60 FPS average. There are other cards on the market that serve a similar purpose as this one, such as the RX570, 580, and 470. These cards can be slightly different in terms of pricing, and will offer you different performance. All of these cards really are very good for their money at the moment, and I'd recommend getting one if you're a budget gamer in need of a cheap graphics card. This has been Primitive PCs. Thank you for watching. Good night.